Could you ever believe a powerful queen would wed a commoner? Or a revered philosopher fall for his brilliant student, risking everything? What about a queen who overthrew her own husband with the help of a daring knight? These stories, unfolding between the 11th and 15th centuries, prove that love, ambition, and defiance could bloom in the most surprising medieval gardens. Number 5. Queen Catherine of Valois and Owen Tudor. The year is 1422. England is a kingdom reeling from the sudden death of its warrior king. Henry V, his infant son, Henry VI, now wears the crown, and the delicate balance of power hangs in the air. At the heart of this unfolding drama is Catherine of Valois, a young queen widowed at just 20 years old. She was the daughter of the mad King Charles VI of France, married to Henry V as part of a peace treaty that aimed to unite the two warring nations. Now she was a queen dowager, a position of considerable influence, yet also one of vulnerability. Her son was king, but she, as a young, beautiful woman, was seen by the English Parliament as a potential risk. There were fears she might remarry into a powerful English noble family, upsetting the political order, or even worse, marry a foreign prince and create new alliances unfavorable to England. Parliament even passed a law in 1428 stating that any future marriage of the Queen Dowager must first be approved by the king and his council. A serious penalty awaited anyone who defied this, including the loss of their lands and goods, but away from the stuffy council chambers and the watchful eyes of nobles. Catherine's life was about to take a turn no one could have predicted. While attending to her young son, the infant King Henry VI, Catherine found herself surrounded by his household staff. Among them was a young, dashing Welshman named Owen Tudor. Owen was not a lord, not a duke, not even a knight of great renown. He was a mere esquire, a squire who had come to England from a respected, though not aristocratic, Welsh family. He was a commoner, a man whose lineage traced back to minor Welsh nobility, certainly not the kind of man one would expect a Queen of England to even notice, let alone fall for. Historical accounts from the time do not give us many details about their first meeting, but it is said Owen caught the Queen's eye. Perhaps it was his handsome appearance, his reported strength, or his charm. One popular, perhaps embellished story tells of Owen falling into Catherine's lap while dancing, an amusing mishap that might have broken the ice between the Queen and the squire. Regardless of the exact moment a connection formed between them, this was a deep, forbidden attraction, a romance that defied every social norm and political expectation of the era. A queen marrying a commoner was simply unheard of, a scandalous act that could destabilize the entire monarchy. Yet Catherine and Owen pursued their connection. The exact date of their marriage is not recorded, and it is widely believed to have been a secret affair. Some historians suggest it happened as early as 1425. Others point to the late 1420s or early 1430s. After the Parliamentary Act was passed, this secrecy was paramount. If their union was discovered, Owen would surely face severe punishment, perhaps even execution, for daring to approach a queen. Catherine herself would face public disgrace and the fury of the powerful English council. They took a tremendous risk for their blossoming love. Despite the danger, their union was fruitful. Catherine of Valois gave birth to at least 3, possibly 4, sons by Owen Tudor: Edmund, Jasper, and Owen, and potentially a 4th son named Edward. She also had a daughter, Margaret. These children, born in secret, were a testament to their enduring bond. They were raised away from the immediate royal court in quieter estates, their existence a closely guarded secret. For many years, Edmund Tudor, their eldest son, was born around 1430. Jasper Tudor, their very names. Edmund and Jasper were not traditionally royal, further indicating their unusual origin. The relationship eventually came to light, though the exact circumstances remain unclear. It is believed that after Catherine's death in 1437, the truth of her marriage and her children with Owen Tudor could no longer be contained. Owen Tudor was imprisoned shortly after Catherine's death, though he later escaped. The children, however, were not punished. In a surprising turn of events, their half-brother, King Henry VI, acknowledged them, granting them lands and titles. Edmund Tudor became the Earl of Richmond, and Jasper Tudor became the Earl of Pembroke. This act of royal recognition, despite the scandal, allowed their family to rise. This unlikely romance, born out of a queen's heart and a commoner's courage, eventually blossomed into a powerful dynasty. Edmund Tudor later married Lady Margaret Beaufort, a descendant of the royal Plantagenet line. Their son, Henry Tudor, would go on to defeat King Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485, seizing the crown and establishing the Tudor dynasty that would rule England for over a century. The children of Catherine of Valois and Owen Tudor, once a secret, became the very foundation of a new royal house, forever changing the course of English history. Their love against all odds created a lineage that brought stability and strength to the kingdom for generations. Number 4. King Edward II of England and Piers Gaveston. The year is 1307. A new king sits on the English throne. Edward II, son of the fearsome and formidable Edward I, known as Longshanks. Edward I had been a powerful, stern ruler, a man of war and strong will. His son, Edward II, was a very different kind of person. He preferred entertainment, sport, and the company of a select few friends over the serious business of governance and warfare. This was a stark contrast to the expectations placed upon a medieval monarch who was expected to be a strong military leader and a shrewd politician. From early childhood, Edward II had a particular bond with a Gascon knight named Piers Gaveston. Gaveston, the son of a Gascon knight who served Edward I, was brought into the royal household as a companion for young Edward. Their relationship quickly grew into an intensely close friendship, one that went beyond the usual camaraderie between a prince and his squire. They shared everything: secrets, laughter, and a profound personal devotion. This deep affection between them was unusual for the time, especially considering the political landscape of the English court. When Edward II ascended to the throne, his first act was to recall Piers Gaveston, who had been exiled by Edward I for his perceived undue influence over the prince. Edward II showered Gaveston with honors and gifts. He made Gaveston the Earl of Cornwall, a title traditionally reserved for members of the royal family. He gave Gaveston immense wealth and power, far beyond what was customary for someone of his standing. The king's devotion was so absolute that it was widely observed and commented upon by chroniclers of the era, including the Annales Londonienses. They wrote of the king's boundless love for Gaveston, describing it as an almost obsessive affection. This intense personal bond, however, created massive problems with the powerful English nobility. The barons, proud and territorial, resented Gaveston's rapid ascent. They saw him as an upstart, a foreign influence who was monopolizing the king's attention and resources. Edward II's favoritism towards Gaveston was seen as a grave dereliction of his royal duties. The king spent lavishly on Gaveston-neglected state affairs and surrounded himself with his companion while alienating the seasoned lords who expected to advise him. Gaveston, for his part, was reportedly arrogant and mocked the English nobles, giving them insulting nicknames. This fueled their resentment and pushed the kingdom to the brink of civil war. The barons repeatedly demanded Gaveston's exile. Edward II, however, refused time and again to be parted from his beloved friend. He would send Gaveston away only to recall him almost immediately, finding excuses or loopholes to bring him back to court. Their bond was so strong, so central to Edward, that he seemed incapable of governing without Gaveston by his side. This was not merely a political alliance, it was a deeply personal attachment that influenced royal policy and shaped the king's very existence. the Parliament and the greater nobility eventually created the Ordinances of 1311, a set of reforms designed to curb royal power and specifically to remove Gaveston. The Ordinances stipulated Gaveston's perpetual exile. Edward reluctantly agreed under immense pressure, but his attachment to Gaveston was too powerful. He found a way to bring Gaveston back to England, yet again sparking open rebellion among the barons. The sheer audacity of Edward's defiance, repeatedly risking his throne for one person, showed the unique and unyielding nature of their connection. This deep and singular bond, which blossomed into an all-consuming devotion, ultimately led to tragedy. In 1312, Gaveston was captured by the rebellious barons. Despite assurances of safety, he was executed without a trial on the orders of Thomas, Earl of Lancaster, one of the most powerful and embittered nobles. Edward II was heartbroken and enraged by the loss of his friend. The killing of Gaveston marked a turning point in Edward's reign, plunging the kingdom into further turmoil and setting the stage for future conflicts between the king and his barons. Even after Gaveston's death, Edward II never forgot him. He honored Gaveston's memory and pursued those responsible for his killing. The unique and unyielding nature of their bond, which defied societal expectations and political realities, left an indelible mark on English history, shaping the king's actions and the fate of his reign in an unprecedented way. The chronicles of the time, such as those by Geoffrey the Baker, reflect the widespread understanding of how profoundly Edward's life and rule were defined by his exceptional attachment to Piers Gaveston. Number 3. Queen Isabella of France and Roger Mortimer. The year is 1325. England is ruled by King Edward II, a monarch whose reign is increasingly unpopular due to his reliance on favorites and his perceived failures in governance. His queen is Isabella, a woman of royal French blood, daughter of the powerful King Philip IV of France. She is known as the She-Wolf of France, a formidable and intelligent woman, but at this point she finds herself in a difficult position. Her marriage to Edward II has been strained for years, marked by his neglect and her growing resentment of his favorites. Like Hugh Despenser, the younger, who had replaced the ill-fated Piers Gaveston in the king's affections and even surpassed him in influence. Despenser's power over the king was absolute, and he consistently undermined the queen, even denying her access to funds and lands. Isabella was sent to France in 1325 to negotiate a peace treaty with her brother, King Charles IV, regarding the disputed territory of Gascony. This diplomatic mission offered her a crucial escape from the oppressive English court and the suffocating influence of the Despensers. While in France, a new figure entered her life: Roger Mortimer, Lord of Wigmore. Mortimer was a powerful English baron, a formidable warrior, and a man of considerable ambition and charm. He had been imprisoned in the Tower of London by Edward II and Hugh Despenser in 1322 for his rebellion against the king. In a daring escape, he managed to flee to France, becoming in exile at the French court, a sworn enemy of Edward II and the Despensers. It was in Paris that the paths of the neglected queen and the exiled baron crossed. Both shared a profound dislike for Edward II and the Despensers. They were both powerful figures, intelligent and driven but in desperate circumstances, seeking retribution and a return to power. Accounts from chroniclers like Jean Froissart and other contemporary sources suggest that a deep and passionate affair quickly blossomed between Isabella and Mortimer. This was more than a mere political alliance. It was a powerful, illicit romance that would shake the foundations of the English throne. Isabella, defying her husband's repeated commands to return to England, remained in France, openly living with Mortimer. This public relationship was a scandalous act for a queen, especially one who was supposed to be a loyal wife and mother. But Isabella was past caring about public opinion, driven by a desire for power and vengeance against the king and his corrupt favorite. Their union in France became a hub for English exiles and malcontents, all eager to see the downfall of Edward II and the Despensers. Mortimer, with his military experience and political cunning, became Isabella's trusted advisor and partner in plotting together. They raised an invasion force. In September 1326, Isabella and Mortimer, accompanied by Isabella's young son, Prince Edward, landed in England. The speed and success of their invasion were remarkable. Many English nobles, weary of Edward II's rule and the Despencer's tyranny, flocked to their banner. The king found little support and fled, eventually captured, along with Hugh Despencer. The Despensers were executed with particular brutality, a clear sign of Isabella's vengeful spirit. Edward II was forced to abdicate his throne in January 1327, making his son Edward III king. For the next 3 years, Isabella and Mortimer effectively ruled England as regents for the young Edward III. Their power was absolute. They dispensed patronage, made political decisions, and governed the kingdom, all while maintaining their close and scandalous relationship. Mortimer was showered with lands and titles, becoming Earl of March and the most powerful man in England, second only to the Queen herself. They held lavish courts, and their shared authority was evident to all. Chroniclers like Adam Miramuff noted their immense influence and joint governance. This was an unlikely partnership, a queen and her banished lover seizing control of a kingdom, a romance that blossomed into shared political dominance. However, their power and their scandalous relationship eventually alienated the young King Edward III and many of the remaining nobles. Edward III, coming of age, resented his mother's lover and their control. In 1330, in a dramatic coup, Edward III, aided by loyal nobles, arrested Mortimer at Nottingham Castle. Mortimer was put on trial for treason, condemned, and executed. Isabella's power was broken, and she was forced into comfortable but restrictive retirement. Despite its tragic end, the relationship between Isabella and Roger Mortimer was a powerful, unlikely romance that reshaped English history. It was a partnership forged in desperation and ambition, a love that defied societal norms and enabled a queen to overthrow her husband and seize control of a kingdom. Truly blossomed into a shared reign, however brief, leaving an indelible mark on the medieval narrative. Number 2. Heloise and Peter Abelard. The year is approximately 1115. Paris is a bustling intellectual center, drawing scholars from across Europe. At its heart is the Notre Dame Cathedral School, where Peter Abelard is the most brilliant and celebrated philosopher of his time. Abelard is a madic, controversial figure, renowned for his sharp mind, his eloquent lectures, and his ground-ring approach to theology and logic. Students flock to hear him, eager to challenge traditional dogma and engage with his dialectical method. He is at the height of his fame, admired and envied in equal measure. In this vibrant intellectual milieu lives Heloise, a young woman of extraordinary intellect and beauty. She is the niece of Fulbert, a canon of Notre Dame, and is already known for her profound knowledge of Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, a rare achievement for anyone, let alone a woman in the 12th century. She is a true prodigy, her intelligence recognized by all who meet her. Fulbert, proud of his niece's abilities, wants her to receive the best education possible. He seeks out Abelard, inviting the renowned philosopher to tutor Heloise privately in his own home. This seemingly innocent arrangement set the stage for one of the most famous and tragic romances of the Middle Ages. Abelard, accustomed to the intellectual challenges of philosophy, found himself captivated not only by Heloise's sharp mind, but also by her youth and beauty. He later wrote in his autobiographical work, Historia Calamitatum, the story of my misfortunes, about how their private lessons quickly turned into something much deeper. He described their intellectual debates as a pretext for love, confessing that more words of love than of our reading passed between us, and more kisses than reasons. Their relationship blossomed into a secret, passionate affair. This was a profoundly unlikely romance. Abelard, as a cleric, was bound by vows of celibacy, or at the very least expected to remain chaste as a scholar and teacher in a church school. Heloise, a promising scholar herself, was meant for a life of learning, possibly within a religious order. Not a scandalous relationship, their love was a direct violation of societal norms, church laws, and Abelard's own professional standing. Yet they pursued it with an intensity that defied all consequences. Heloise became pregnant. This event made their secret impossible to keep. To protect Heloise and their unborn child, and perhaps to salvage some of Abelard's reputation, they fled Paris. Heloise gave birth to a son, whom she named Astrolabe, in a desperate attempt to legitimize their relationship and protect Abelard's career. They secretly married. However, Abelard, fearing the impact on his ecclesiastical career, soon insisted that Heloise deny the marriage publicly and return to a convent. Heloise, out of love and loyalty to Abelard, obeyed him, even though it meant sacrificing her own wishes and future. Fulbert, Heloise's uncle, was enraged by what he perceived as Abelard's betrayal and dishonor to his family. In a horrific act of vengeance, he arranged for men to break into Abelard's lodging and castrate him. This brutal act brought their physical relationship to an abrupt and devastating end, forever altering Abelard's life and effectively forcing him into monastic life. Heloise, devastated but still fiercely loyal, eventually took the veil as a nun at the Abbey of Argenteuil, as Abelard had initially urged. Their physical separation, however, did not extinguish their intellectual and emotional bond. Years later, a series of remarkable letters began to pass between them, ignited by Abelard's Historia Calamitatum, which Heloise happened to read. These letters, known as the Letters of Abelard and Heloise, are extraordinary historical documents, revealing the enduring depth of their connection. Heloise's letters are particularly powerful, expressing her unwavering love, her intellectual brilliance, and her complex emotional landscape. She wrestled with her spiritual devotion versus her undying human love for Abelard, a testament to a romance that had blossomed far beyond the physical realm. Abelard, for his part, offered guidance and theological discourse, but the underlying affection and respect remained. Their story is one of a forbidden love that, despite immense suffering and societal condemnation, transformed into an enduring intellectual and spiritual partnership. Their shared passion for learning, their profound understanding of each other's minds, and their unwavering loyalty, even in separation and pain, allowed their unique romance to blossom into an intellectual legacy that has fascinated scholars. They defied expectations, suffered greatly, but their bond proved unbreakable, preserved in their eloquent and heartfelt correspondence. Number 1. Eleanor of Aquitaine and Henry Plantagenet. The year is 1152. The political landscape of Europe is a complex web of alliances, rivalries, and shifting power. At the center of this intricate stage is Eleanor of Aquitaine, a woman of extraordinary power, wealth, and influence. She is not merely a duchess in her own right, controlling vast territories in southwestern France, but she has also just had her marriage to King Louis VII of France annulled. Her marriage to Louis had lasted 15 years, produced 2 daughters but no sons, and was plagued by incompatibility. Louis was pious and ascetic. Eleanor was vibrant, worldly, and independent-minded. The annulment on grounds of consanguinity, while technically true, was likely a cover for a deeper political and personal mismatch. Eleanor, now free, was the most eligible woman in Europe. Her vast lands of Aquitaine made her an irresistible prize for any aspiring monarch. Many powerful men, dukes, and counts sought her hand, eager to add her immense territories to their own. But Eleanor, a woman who had already been a queen and knew her own mind, made a choice that stunned Europe and defied conventional expectations. Just 8 weeks after her annulment from Louis VII, Eleanor married Henry Plantagenet, Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou. This was an incredibly audacious and unlikely match for several reasons. First, Henry was a decade younger than Eleanor. In a society where women were typically married off much younger to older, more established men, this age gap, with the woman being older, was highly unusual, especially for a woman of Eleanor's status. Second, Henry was still only a duke, though a powerful one and not yet a king. Eleanor had been a queen. Marrying a duke was a step down in immediate status, even if he possessed great ambition. Furthermore, Henry was technically a vassal of King Louis VII for his French lands, making his marriage to Louis's recently annulled wife a direct affront to the French king. This marriage instantly created an enormous, unified Anglo-Angevin empire that stretched from Scotland to the Pyrenees, threatening the very heart of France. It was a bold strategic move by both Eleanor and Henry, and a clear signal of their joint ambition. Chroniclers of the time, such as Ralph of Diceto, recorded the swiftness of this marriage, marveling at how Eleanor, already a queen, chose a younger, ambitious duke who seemed destined for greatness. Within 2 years of their marriage, Henry became King Henry II of England. Eleanor once again was a queen. Their union, though born of ambition and strategy, quickly blossomed into a powerful, if tumultuous, partnership. Together, they ruled a vast and sprawling empire, one of the largest in medieval Europe. Their court was known for its intellectual vibrancy and its patronage of the arts, attracting poets, scholars, and troubadours. They traveled extensively throughout their domains, asserting their authority and shaping the political landscape of both England and France. Eleanor gave Henry 8 children in rapid succession, 5 sons and 3 daughters. Among them were future kings, Richard the Lionheart and John. The sheer number of their children and their successful survival into adulthood was remarkable for the era, solidifying the Plantagenet dynasty and securing the line of succession. This proliferation of heirs was a testament to the strength and purpose of their union. Their relationship, however, was far from tranquil. It was marked by intense power struggles, fierce arguments, and bitter betrayals, particularly concerning their sons. Eleanor, accustomed to ruling in her own right, was not content to be merely a queen consort. She wielded considerable influence and often clashed with Henry over his growing absolutism and his extramarital affairs. These conflicts eventually led to open rebellion. In 1173, Eleanor actively supported her sons in revolt against their father, Henry II. This rebellion was ultimately crushed, and Eleanor was imprisoned by Henry for over a decade, a harsh punishment for her defiance. Even during her long imprisonment, Eleanor remained a powerful and influential figure, corresponding with her children and retaining her status as queen. Upon Henry's death in 1189, her favorite son, Richard the Lionheart, immediately released her and restored her to her rightful place as Queen Dowager. Eleanor, in her late 60s then, took an active role in governing England during Richard's long absences on crusade and in captivity. She negotiated his release from captivity and played a crucial role in maintaining stability in the kingdom. She continued to be a formidable political force well into her 80s, even arranging the marriage of her granddaughter, Blanche of Castile, to the future King Louis VIII of France, thereby securing peace between England and France. The romance between Eleanor of Aquitaine and Henry Plantagenet was unlikely in its inception, tempestuous in its course, but profoundly abatel in its legacy. It blossomed into a powerful ruling partnership that created one of Europe's most formidable empires, produced a dynasty of influential kings, and shaped the course of English and French history for centuries to come. Eleanor's independent spirit and Henry's boundless ambition found their match in each other, leaving an indelible mark on the medieval world.